I dated a girl who lived in the house where Aaron Burr hid after taking out Alexander Hamilton. As for me, I always said ghosts were nonsense, but that place was crazily haunted. In the middle of the night, with nobody else in the house but us, I'd hear footsteps, hear whispers, and see shadows moving from room to room. Doors would open and close, and objects would fall off shelves. One night I was playing with her dog, rolling a tennis ball into the next room, and the dog was rolling it back. Bounce, bounce, nothing for a few seconds. Bounce, bounce, and the ball comes back. I did that for about 15 minutes before I realized the dog was behind me, asleep. Then the door slammed, and I went straight home. My folks and I lived right at the edge of a fairly big national forest. The back 4 acres or so of our property were fenced in so the dogs could run, but they constantly found ways out, and we had to patch holes or fill in digs. This had gone on for months and was just a part of life now. One night, I was getting home fairly late, and as I got out of my car, my dad hollered from somewhere in the woods along the fence saying, "Hey, since you're home, can you come give me a hand?" The person I was on the phone with heard him and said they'd let me go since it sounded like I had a fence to fix. I hollered back that I was going to set my stuff in the house and I'd be right there. When I opened the door to set my stuff down, Pappy was sound asleep in the recliner in the living room. As soon as I saw him, every hair on me stood on end. I practically dove inside, shut the door, and slammed that deadbolt home as if I were trying to drive it into the doorframe. I don't know what was calling me from the woods, but I know it definitely wasn't my dad. Our family cat was quite old and pretty sick. My sister was leaving the country for about 6 months. The cat had bonded with her as a kitten, and she picked him up the day she left and told him to wait for her to come home. He passed away about a month later. For the next 5 months, he haunted the house. You'd hear him running up and down the stairs, pushing doors open. It was as if he was still there. This continued until my sister came home, and then it happened once more for her, and that was that. The little guy waited. Some friends and I were dared to spend the night in an abandoned building near our hometown. I believe it was either a school or a church. Nothing too creepy at first, just a few rooms where the hair on the back of your neck would stand up, or you felt like you were being watched. After sunset, we began hearing full-on mumbled conversations and children laughing in rooms other than the one we were sitting in. More than a little unnerving, but we tried to stick it out. Right about midnight, I went out for a piss and came face to face with a man bleeding from his eyes and ears with a noose around his neck. Pissed my pants and screamed my head off, dead sprint back to my buddy's car. They came noping out of the building, having had a similarly terrifying experience with a shadow that spoke with a little girl's voice. Haven't been anywhere near it since. In high school, my friend told me her house was haunted. I thought she was paranoid. One night I stayed over. We were up playing video games late into the night. At some point, I needed to pee, so I walked across her house to the bathroom. In the living room, her little sister's toys were scattered on the floor. The TV was still on, with the volume muted. There was a naked doll lying on the floor. One of those dolls that talk when you press its stomach. When I walked past the doll, it immediately said, "Hi, wanna play?" It was very weird timing for it to say this to me as I entered the room, but I told myself that toys malfunction sometimes and it was nothing. I continued to the bathroom as the doll continued to rattle off different phrases it was programmed to say. I could hear it still speaking while I was in the bathroom. I still felt a little weirded out and decided to wait for it to stop talking before walking back to my friend's room. It did not stop talking, so I mustered the courage to walk back through the living room, past the doll once more. This time, when I walked by, it said, "Bye-bye." So, I ran the rest of the way back to my friend's room. I don't know if that was actually paranormal or not, but it certainly made me want to shit my pants. This happened when I was around 13. I came home at night and noticed that my dad had forgotten to lock the back door and all the windows on the first floor. It was just my mom and me in the house since my dad was out of town. Since I was technically the man of the house, I decided to do a complete check of the approximately 3,500 square feet house by myself. I swept through the first and second levels, checking under the bed and in all the closets. When it came time to check the unfinished basement, I grabbed a knife and had my mom follow behind me. I was 13, give me a break. Now, when I took a few steps into the basement, before I could turn on the lights, a few boxes that were placed on the concrete floor fell over, almost as if someone was hiding behind them for cover. Gathering as much courage as I had at 13, I decided to proceed further with the check. My mom, who was 43 or 44 at that time, stopped dead in her tracks and didn't want to come down any further. At this point, I was 100% sure there was someone in the house. I was just happy I had the knife. I swept through the entire basement and found no one there. The boxes that fell over were heavy and couldn't have fallen over without some intervention. I didn't sleep that entire night, just kept guard. I still haven't figured out how it happened. No scientific explanation, no pressure points on the floor. Nothing. Right after I bought my place in 2009, I had a roommate while I was engaged and waiting for the wedding. I did not live with my fiancée. One night, he had been out to a party, and I stayed home and went to bed instead. Around 2 a.m., he suddenly burst through my door, panicked, and said that someone had broken into the house. He said, "Listen," and right then, I heard the sound of someone running up the stairs to the second floor, where I have a large rec room, partially over my bedroom, stomping very loudly. I burst out of bed, grabbed the pistol I keep next to my bed, and ran to the stairwell, my heart pounding and fully expecting to be seconds away from shooting someone. I got to the top of the stairs, and no one was in the room. I checked the closets, the door to my deck, it was locked, and my office that was upstairs too, also locked. No one was there. We went back downstairs and sat in the living room, which is also beneath the rec room, talking about it for a couple of minutes when we heard the sound of someone running around again upstairs. I ran back up, and still no one was there. However, there was furniture pulled out into the middle of the room, and I found the light on in my locked office. That scared the crap out of me for some reason, even though weird things had been going on for several months. This incident happened one morning when I'd woken up early to go snowboarding alone. As I was grabbing breakfast, I noticed some red spots on the floor. My roommate had also been out the night before, and I noticed a bag of Arby's sitting on the table. I figured he'd spilled some of Arby's sauce or something. I didn't ask him about it because he was still asleep, and I left without giving it any more thought. Around noon, I stopped at a restaurant at the top of the ski area, which was the only place on the mountain that had cell service, to get some lunch and checked my phone to see several voicemail notifications from both my roommate and fiancé. They were panicked, saying there was blood all over the floor. I called them back, and they told me that my roommate had woken up to find red spots similar to what I'd seen, literally all over the floors in the house and even up on the counters and walls. They said they had originally thought one of our pets had been injured, but had checked all of them, and they were fine. When I got home that evening, I saw for myself the extent of where this substance had appeared. It definitely appeared to be dried blood, and was hard to clean up, as blood can be, and had that characteristic smell blood has. It wasn't like big pools, but just little droplets all over, counters, floors, doors, even chest height on many of the walls. It took hours for us to scrub it all off. It covered the house to an extent that there was no possible way I would have missed seeing it all when I left that morning. So, it appeared at some point between 6:30 a.m. when I left and 9 a.m. when my roommate said he woke up. We debated saving a sample and submitting it to a lab for analysis, but then we realized that if it turned out to be human blood, it might put us under suspicion of a crime. Still, to this day, we have no explanation. Recently, I experienced a strange event in my house. These events happen rarely, maybe a couple of times every 4 or 5 years. My wife has a set of custom earrings she loves. One is a yak, one is a bunny, our nicknames. One morning she asks if I've seen her earrings. She's worried because they aren't where she left them on her jewelry box. We look through the closet in the bedroom. We check in the bed sheets and around the bed. Nothing. We go through the bathroom and find nothing. We basically turn the bedroom upside down, to no avail. She's super down, as she really loves those earrings. 2 days pass. That evening she gets home from work, but before she can change out of her scrubs, she comes into the TV room and says, "You found my bunny earring? Where was it? Did you find the yak too?" I what? I ask, confused. I had forgotten about the whole thing, my wife's earrings occupying little of my mental energy. "It was on top of my jewelry box," she exclaims before her face scrunches. She realizes if I didn't find it, how could it possibly be on top of her jewelry box? It was the first place we looked, and we opened the box, meaning it would have fallen off if we somehow missed it. Weirded out, she shrugs and goes to get changed with 1 out of 2 earrings now accounted for. As I get ready to go to bed that night, I plug in my phone on my nightstand and go to put it down in its spot. But I stop. There, where my phone always goes, is this little yak earring looking up at me. The fuck? Hey bun. The yak is back too, apparently. That same night, something else happened. Not as weird, but still, given the whole earring thing, that night, my 2 dogs were acting strangely. My old yellow lab kept rumbling in her easy chair. It's not a thing she does often, but she was just uneasy. My golden, ever the happy, doofy dog kept popping her head up with her ears set to friendly mode, looking towards the hallway to the bedroom. I know her expressions, and the one she kept using was the "oh, hello" look, as if she kept seeing someone who wasn't there. Or at least, not that I could see. This story I've experienced was definitely scary for me and still unnerves me, even nearly 20 years later. My mom was in the hospital 50 miles away. I was 19. We were pretty sure this was it. I was home alone. My parents' house is big. It's off the beaten path on a small lagoon. My dad had been staying up at the hospital. That night, I went to bed about 1 a.m. I was playing on my laptop. My room was in a separate wing of the house. It can be sealed off with a single locking door. The door was shut, but not locked. I have always been scared of the dark, so I had the lights in my wing on, as well as the closet light. As I was messing around on GameFAQs, I saw the lights in my wing turn off, all of them. The band of light under the door went black. I hopped up in bed and stared at it. My bedroom door was unlocked, and I was debating getting up to lock it when the shut door slammed. As in, it sounded like someone straight up kicked the bottom of the door with all their strength. I remember squeaking in shock. It took me about 6 seconds to be up on both feet with a blade about 4 paces back and just right of the door. I remember thinking if the door swung open, I could be on whoever it was almost instantly. I was also silently cursing that there was no light under the door anymore. No way to see the shadow of whoever was out there. Nothing happened. I was fighting off the fear of the situation and stupidly decided that going on offense was all that was left. I didn't have a phone in my room, and my Nokia was in another wing of the house charging. I threw the door open with my knife low and my left hand in a guarded position. There was no one there. I tossed the hallway light switch on. There was no one in my wing. There was no one in the house. The burglar alarm was still on. Confused, I turned on the main house lights and sealed the wing off, locking the door between the main house and my area. I went back to my room and just sat there with my laptop open. My bedroom door now had a slight bow in it. A couple of hours passed with me warily laying in bed. Around 3 a.m., the lights under the door went dark. That left me terrified. My knife seemed pretty insignificant, and my previous dumb courage had run out. I scooted my bed, no easy task, against my bedroom door, grateful the door opened inward. It all felt so wrong, like something was angry with me. I retreated to my closet and waited for the sun to come up. When the skylight in my room got bright, my courage returned and I moved the bed and exited my room. The wing door had been unlocked, which required a key from the other side. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs in the main house and realized my dad was home. I felt a little foolish, as obviously he had been responsible for turning the lights off the second time. I led my greeting with, "Oh, so it was you who turned all the lights off." He looked at me and replied, "What? I got home about 10 minutes ago." I have zero clues what happened that night, but it never happened before that night or after. Whatever it was, it seemed to like the dark and wasn't a fan of doors. And it seemed to be in my wing of the house. My parents built the house, and nothing untoward had ever taken place there. My bedroom door at my parents' house still has a bow in it to this day. This was almost 20 years ago. My mom is still alive, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. The house I live in is totally haunted. We have no idea why, as no one has ever died here. My grandfather built the house in 1948, and before that, the land was an orchard. My dad experienced some weird stuff when he grew up here too, but he never said anything until I brought it up. He thought he was crazy and was relieved to know I also noticed this stuff as well. There's a lot of stuff that happens, from cabinets with very solid latches opening and closing throughout the night, to waking up with bleeding scratches somewhere on my body, as if someone had dug their fingernails across my skin with a lot of force. Before it's asked, I have no pets, and the bleeding scratches occur once or twice a year. The two freakiest things I've experienced, though. I usually make my bed before going to sleep, as I'm too lazy to do it in the morning, and can't stand sleeping in a bed with the covers all messed up. I have 3 covers. One night, I threw the first cover on the bed, then grabbed the second and threw it on. Finally, I reached down to grab the third, and just as I was getting ready to throw it on, something grabbed the 2 covers and completely threw them back off the bed to the floor. It scared the crap out of me. The worst incident occurred when I was in the downstairs bathroom, adjacent to an office, brushing my teeth. There is an old rotary-style phone on the desk in the office, on top of a pile of phone books. Anyway, it was around 3:30 a.m., and that phone started ringing. I stopped brushing my teeth, walked over to it, and thought, that's weird. We haven't had a landline for over 10 years. Then, my eyes saw the phone cable plugged into the phone, with the other end completely unplugged from the wall. I said, "Nope, I'm not answering that. Nothing good can come of it," and I ran off to bed, trying to sleep. Sometimes I wonder who or what might have been on the other end if I had answered it. I've seen a lot of weird paranormal phenomena, but my father's house has always taken the cake for me. Usually, hauntings were minimal. The TV remote would randomly relocate, windows and cabinets would open, and footsteps would sound through the hallways. There would occasionally be disembodied conversations on the front porch and in the laundry room. You never felt alone. The house was over a century old, too, and was nestled away in a historic neighborhood. I used to shrug it off as paranoia, insomnia, and nightmares. One day, my sister confronted me. She told me to stop knocking on the walls and the door of her room. It was constant. Knocking on the door, next to her head, on the door again, by her head again, back on the wall. She was sick of me trying to convince her that the house was haunted, and at this point she was freaked out as well. I had to tell her it wasn't me. I wouldn't dare imitate the ghost, and I never left my room after dark. The hallway really freaked me out, as did the back of the house, so I limited my time in these spaces. She no longer asked me to stop knocking, but would instead come to my room when it started up again. This went on for months, and this was mild. 2 nights stick with me. The first, I am alone. It is late, and I've been up on the phone with a friend. We don't talk much and are in different time zones, so I was willing and ready to stay up late. I do have a rule, though, one my mom taught me. Don't stay up past 3 a.m., especially in this house. It gets weird there at night. I realize it's about 3, and I tell my friend I have to get to bed. They tease me for a bit, all is well, and we part ways. The layout of my room is important. It is at the front of the house and is connected to a long hallway that leads to the back of the house. From my bedroom door, I can see out the windows to the backyard. I can also see everything down the long wooden hallway. I can see through the old keyhole in the door. I set my phone down, get up to go turn the light off. The switch is next to my door, and I pause. Something is coming down the hallway. It is loud. It sounds like rust and old metal wheels dragging, and it is coming down the hallway toward me. It sounds heavy, like a mine car or something else. I am frozen and staring out the keyhole. Nothing is there. Nothing is there. Nothing is there. It gets closer and closer and slams into my door. The door budges open and shuts again. There is nothing there, nothing through the keyhole. I have never heard a sound like that before. I slept with the lights on. Toward the end of my stay in this house, my sister had a friend over. It was nighttime, and we were all watching something on our family's computer. We had a clear view of the front of the house and had all the animals with us at the time, 2 dogs, a parrot. My sister's friend asked us if we had any Pop-Tarts left, and my sister replied, "Yeah, but they're in the basement and I don't really want to go down there." I agreed with her 100%. The basement was something else. It was cold and damp, housing memories of old Christmases, bulk food, and something else. I would run up and down the stairs as long as I could remember, trying to run from evil. The basement was also unfinished and featured real dirt, earth, and dust from its original construction. It made us uneasy, and we never went down there after dark. This led to a series of teases and taunts from my sister's friend about how we were babies and how ghosts weren't real. We tried laughing it off but felt uneasy. We still weren't going down there, that was for sure. Her friend ended the statement with, "Ghosts aren't real." A minute or two passes, and her friend looks up from the computer. "Wasn't the light in the living room just on?" We all freeze and look up. The light in the living room, the one our parents left on before they left, wasn't on anymore. Right as we notice, the light snaps back on and something starts walking down the hallway, connected to the living room and the room we were sitting in, running adjacent, also the one I can see from my bedroom. Storming, rather. These footsteps are quick and deliberate. The dogs freeze, hair standing up on the backs of their necks. The bird's eyes are wide, and he's standing in the corner of his cage. My sister and her friend grab each other, and we all find ourselves cowering in the corner of the room. There was no time for, "We told you not to mess with it," comments that night, only fear. Thankfully, we moved out about 2 weeks later. This went on for about 10 years. My old apartment seemed to harbor some kind of spirit. It was housed in an old building that had been converted into 4 units, a basement, a main floor, a second floor, and a small addition at the back, which served as another unit. My apartment was located on the second floor. Given that this was an older house situated in a fairly rural area, the occasional mouse finding its way inside was not unexpected. Indeed, I encountered 2 during my 2 years there. However, one peculiar observation was the regular occurrence of movement in my peripheral vision, something darting in and out. Initially, I assumed it was another mouse and set traps, but never encountered any further signs of them. Oddly, this happened in every room, at varying times, and typically at my side, regardless of which way I faced. When my girlfriend began to visit and stay over more frequently, I mentioned the phenomenon to her, and she too noticed it. It always occurred when one was alone in the apartment. Then, one day, I realized that it had been a few weeks since I had last experienced any shadow movement. My girlfriend casually mentioned, "Yeah, I got really tired of it, so I saved your place while you were at work about 2 weeks ago." After that, we never experienced any other issues until I moved out. I was painting the master bath of a home that my ex-fiancée and I had been living in for about a year and a half. We had experienced paranormal sounds and events in the house prior to this. The bathroom was a mess from the painting when suddenly the hair on my arm stood up and everything glitched, as if reality shifted for a second. Then, I heard an angry old lady's voice with somewhat of an electric distortion to it saying, "Stop messing up my bathroom." I was freaked out for a second, but calmly put the paintbrush down and said, "I can do that. I can stop doing anything to the house and let it deteriorate to the point that there is no house, or I can take care of it, love it, and let my family create new memories here too." We still experience some freaky events, but nothing like that again. Another time, I was working at a hospital, and my office was located in a research building. I walked into the men's room and saw this old, humpbacked gentleman washing his hands. Given how humpbacked he was, I felt sorry for him. He was in black sweatpants and a red and black checkered flannel shirt, with a black toboggan on and stringy blackish hair coming out around it. I was standing with my back to the door and looked to my right for a few seconds to scan the urinal and to see if the stall was empty. When I turned back, he was gone. It was impossible because I was fully blocking the only entrance/exit. He was as solid as you or I, and he vanished. When I was in high school, I was home one night with my sister and her friend from across the alley. She was about 21 at the time. My mom was out of town on business, as she normally was a few times a month. We were in the living room watching TV when all three of us heard the basement door close. The basement door had a stop at the bottom that made a distinct sweeping noise. We were all very confused because our mom wasn't supposed to be home until the next evening. She normally came through the basement when she rode her bike home from work, but she would be getting dropped off by a cab at the front door if she was out of town. Our minds trying to make sense of it, we went to the basement door, and my sister called down, "Mom?" No response. She called again, and all three of us heard my mom's voice respond, "Yes." We were relieved and relaxed a little, and asked what she was doing home early. We never got a response. We ran next door to our neighbor, who was a CPD officer. She swept the house and found nobody. In the 20 years I lived in that house, our neighbor came by 3 times for similar situations and never found anything.